Move to approve the mentioned items for August 8th, 2018.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. 4.1, minutes of July 25th, 2018.
I move to approve the minutes of the July 25th, 2018. as presented.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay. Number 5, correspondence.
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Number 6, public comment. There is none. Number 7, report 7.1, 2018-19 fall sport.
Board, I am pleased to introduce to you your new vice principal athletic director. I know one of you had the opportunity to meet, Mr. Chris Rose. So, welcome, Mr. Chris, and welcome your report.
Thank you. Okay, so as mentioned, I'm the athletic director and vice principal. My name is Christopher Rose. I'm currently about 2 weeks in town. There on top, you'll see your list of fall advisors and coaches that I'm currently in contact with as we begin the sports season here. Official practice is going to begin on Monday, August 13th. On the next page, you'll see that we have some reclassification. We moved to 2A classification. And that's clear for a couple of the athletics. For several of them, we will be special districts, meaning we're placing 3A schools and 2A as well as some normal schools. Reclassification is based on the average daily membership of the school. And the ADAM number, the ADN number was taken for our campus. There's a computation performed by ELSA, and according to our numbers, we're moving to 2A, which is convenient for us considering our location and distance to membership schools. Following that, you'll see our list, our number there, just in the list of other schools in the state. That's all there is, just a reference to see where we stand on there. And I believe we're at 202. They do subtract 25% of our socioeconomic or free lunch number, hence the number 202 for our added number. Following that, you'll see some of the that's the 2A conference classification for the state. So we are 2A5, Southern Cascade League. So those are the teams that will be playing, for example, in football. Like I said, some of our sports will be special district, and so on the next page you'll see both 3A and 1A. I've just circled a few of the teams that we will be playing in some of the various sports, such as soccer, and competing against volleyball tournaments and such. Okay, following that is a memo from OSAA that came out just about this time last year regarding air quality. This was a hot topic of conversation at the athletic director conference today that came from the mentor. It really affects Southern Oregon, so a lot of the athletic directors there had strong concerns about that. We talked about it quite a bit today. And so, some of the schools in Southern Oregon have the ability to move practice inside, for example, for football or soccer. Inside air quality isn't always better. It depends on your filtration system. But the discussion is centered around what are we going to do if we don't meet the minimum practices before our first competition. Right now, if we exceed the air index quality level of 100, then we cannot have outdoor practices.
What is it right now?
So I checked at 5 o'clock when I got to town, and there was a 1 hour delay on the air index website, so it was from 4 p.m. and it was at 73. So it would have been okay to practice today at this time.
Today it stayed under 100 all day.
I think yesterday was pretty close too.
It's been improving in this area. Medford and Klamath Falls have had worse air than we have. So they're a little more concerned. Grants Pass is improving again.
When I left Central Point in the James Rodeo, it was 500. It was bad.
So that's a consideration of ours, and it's something I'll have to deal with if we need to move teams inside. And following that are the schedules, various schedules for the fall sports. We have football, both varsity and JV are on there. There were some updates today as I talked with other athletic directors. I need to make some changes with our volleyball, for example. We were able to hash out a couple of things. Stepping into this position, I have a little more information on our tournament, for example, for volleyball, the tall-man tournament, which I'm going to finalize still. The boys and girls soccer are in there, and both varsity and JV volleyball are included there. Any questions?
So we couldn't get Brookings JV to come very far, I see.
We talked about that today, actually. There's a new athletic director there as well, Ms. Shearer, and she realized later that it wasn't quite halfway, so we talked about meeting at a different location, maybe southern Medford area next time. So that's something that several schools, for example, I talked to the Glide athletic director about meeting halfway for some of our competitions at a neutral site. To make it easier on the kids, especially those JV players on the football team that have Monday night games, to give them a better opportunity to start the week off right and not have such a long night.
Christian metropolitan.
So with all the redistricting that happened last year for this coming year, the consternation about that pretty well settled down, you can tell?
I did not get the feeling that there were too many frustrated athletic directors there this morning. One thing that was a cause of concern was determining who's going to be in our special district for baseball and softball, and waiting on the state for that, and then having to create our schedules after that once they let us know. Thank you. So we're waiting for OSWA to determine who's going to be in our special district for baseball. We want to do those schedules. That was one point of concern. Otherwise, I did not hear about that.
Thank you, Chris. Are there any more questions on that? Good. Okay, 7.2, Avid.
I sent a team off to Abbott, San Diego last week. We have 3 of them sitting in the room here,
Yeah.
so I guess I'll let Mr. Stratton lead the charge.
So, I guess I'll stand here too. I don't know, where do people normally stand when they present at the chairs?
So I can look at you.
I'm gonna stand on the other side of the camera, then I won't be in the camera. So we sent a group, let's see if I can do these both, sent a group of staff, Mr. Rose and myself, I almost said Ms. Hine, Ms. Mize, Ms. Schulenberger, Ms. Young. I'm just going around the vehicles we drive down the road.
Mr. Louie, Ms.
Mr.
Smith.
Louie and Ms. Smith. Is that, did I get everybody?
And Ms. Harris.
And Ms. Harris. See, I could have said Ms. Winters. But we had a great time, drove to San Diego. We drove to Reno in the minibus and got to know each other and caught the plane. Took an hour and 20 minutes from Reno to Vegas, which should have been a 45-minute flight. We couldn't figure out. But we literally went almost all the way out to the coast and came back. And in ways we made it, had some great Uber experiences. My first Uber ever. So that was, check that off the bucket list. And then we ended up there at the conference, and the conference was scattered about the conference convention center and a couple hotels. And the 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we always met at least half a day as a site team. And that's where we talked about what are we going to do in our building to move forward. And then the other half of the day we broke up into what I would call our jobs. And in those jobs, we were meeting from people from all over the United States that had the similar roles. I was in a district director group, and there was people from Arizona, California, Oregon, Washington, and New Mexico. And then we had leadership people. You were in a leadership, Mr. Louie and Mrs. Harris, right? We're in leaderships.
She was in a separate one, yes, from Mr. Louie, and I was in leadership.
And then we had content. Then we had teachers that were in content. Were you content or leadership?
I'm doing the Avid Elect, so
Okay.
I had to do the second year of that,
Avid
which was tutorology.
Tutorology. And then the rest were in their content area, learning how to use Avid. And I think it was two things I got out, or a couple things I got out of it was one, me and Mr. Rose to hang out with our Avid team and also get to know some of the, what I call movers and shakers in the building and start building that relationship. And the next piece for me is I've heard of Avid over the years as being a principal in Wyoming, and it mainly was stealing these cool classroom ideas from teachers that I'd hired from other districts and implementing it into our team in grade levels. So I had a little inkling, but not much. And when I read on the internet about it was, I had some small concerns or questions about it. And right off the bat, when I went into the district, or I was not a DD, what was it called? Admin director, yeah,
Yeah.
administrative director.
Uh-huh.
The first thing they said, and the quote that came out for me that stuck in my head was, "Avid is good for all, essential for some." And that's their philosophy. Their mission statement, I got it right here: close the achievement gap by preparing all students for college readiness and success in a global society. So even though we focus on a group in our Avid tutorial and our Avid elective, the whole thing is to get all students prepared for college. And when I started hearing that wording, a lot of my apprehensions literally went away. I've always been a big fan of two different philosophies. Not every student's going to go to college. I'm a big fan of the career CTE programs. I'm a big fan of military. I'm a big fan of going to mom and dad's and running the family ranch or farm. College, career, military ready. But the key piece is we want to open as many possible doors for our kids so that when they graduate as seniors, they have every opportunity. Not just, well, I was just in the career track. God, I really want to go military. I really want to go to college. Our goal is to open all doors, and that's Avid's goal, is to open all doors. And that, for me, I was just like, yes, I think we're in the right place. So I'm really excited about that because our mission statement says preparing today for a successful tomorrow. And so it's all doing the same thing. So we did an activity, and I actually was going to bring that activity to you guys, but I decided not to. And our first activity is we were all given a sticky note, and they asked us to write down some of the top qualities we would want for a career-ready student. A career-ready student. So we listed all those qualities individually. So you think about what you would want a career-ready student. Think about those soft skills or whatever you're thinking about. So we wrote them down individually, then we shared in our table groups. There was 8 tables. We shared in our table groups, and we picked the top 5 in our table groups. And then we took it a classic development, took it, slapped it up on the poster board across the room. Everybody's top 5 was almost identical. Like we might have one that wasn't the next person's top 5, but it was in all 6 others' top 5. We were all, and there was over 50 of us in that room, top 5 were dead on, and that was career ready. And the presenter goes, now, what if I cross out career and write college? It was the same 5. It's those same soft skills that we're talking about: organization, readiness, work ethic, people skills, willing to learn, coachability, grit, try. Those were my 2. If you know anything about me, it doesn't fit right up my alley. So it was cool to understand in that piece there that Avid is not just getting a handful of kids, you're going to go to college. No. The stuff that Avid helps us, or if you have that Avid mindset, is getting all those students to have the soft skills so that when they leave Lakeview High School, every possible opportunity is out there for them. And so for me, leaving that 3-day conference, thinking about it, brainstorming, working with the great group of people we had, I'm excited to have that tool to help us get those students that way. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited about the funding and everything that allows us to do that and move forward and continue to use that platform. So I guess that's what let me double check my notes. Yeah, I talked about my door analogy, handcuffs. We're removing handcuffs so kids have those opportunities. And you can ask us questions, or the 3 of us here.
Chris, Suzanne, you want to chime in?
Sure. I think one of the buzzwords in our particular strand, I was in the Leadership for Advancing Avid with Mr. Louie, was also not a focus necessarily on preparing students for college, because we have a lot of options out there, and some of those options fit some students better than others. And it was just being ready for that opportunity. Like Mr. Stratton said, it's not our choice to close those doors for the children now to say, well, this is going to be your track. We want to prepare them as best we can for any of those tracks. They have a lot of growing to do still, even when they leave college. And I'm a testimony to that. I grew a lot after college. I had no idea what I wanted to do. Right out of college, I wandered for a while. And so preparing students to come out of high school and to have open doors and choices is what this is about.
I found it encouraging when we sat down as a site team, we have to go through, there's 4 categories that Avid has you go through, and in each category they have different check marks. And one of those categories has 41, and so all told, there's probably, I don't know, I'm guessing 70 with all 4. And I found it really encouraging that on a scale from 1 to 4, we had only like a handful of 1s. And so out of 70, we're doing really well. Sometimes we were arguing, you know, are we a 3 or a 4? Not are we a 1 or a 2, you know, hoping that we're a 2, but no, are we there? And so I found that encouraging, that especially given last year where we kind of were in a holding pattern, that we didn't really lose ground. And so I think that that's encouraging, that we still have improvement to do in almost every area, but that we are doing that. And so I found that encouraging.
It was cool, because that one afternoon, we could have easily been done and on our own, and we kept on working as a team. And it was cool to be part of that, to see everybody really buy into it and want to get something done, and we worked longer than we were supposed to or needed to. I think we were one of the last people to leave the convention center, if not the last. So that was cool.
We're invested in it, using that tool to evaluate ourselves and look at what we've accomplished and where we want to go was really important. And I did say college, I meant high school, I had no idea after high school.
So this, we're starting with our 3rd year?
No, actually, it's our 5th. The group that we started with as 7th graders, they're gonna be juniors.
Okay.
And so, yeah, they're starting to really be experts. And so this year, I'm gonna have those kids plus 10th and 9th graders, and man, I'm gonna have to bring my game, because they're gonna know if I'm not. So hopefully tutorology.
I thought it was good too, because it feels like the Avid people are growing also, because they came back with a couple things saying, we realize that Cornell notes are not the only way to take notes. And so instead of saying to be an Avid school, you have to do Cornell notes, we're like, no, you have to take what they use, focus notes. Focus note taking, because every subject area and every learning style recalls and pulls things together differently. And so for me, it was like, well, they're not set in their ways, they are growing just as much as we are, and they're willing to change with their student population as the needs of that student population change over the years. So I thought that was really awesome, and they're really, really pushing that elementary piece. That was a new, you could hear that there was a lot of elementary schools that were really fresh and getting known, they're trying to incorporate that. And that totally looks different too, because you're not having an elementary child take Cornell notes, but you can start to build those soft skills, those learning skills. It's good stuff.
So, look forward to your thoughts after your school year of doing it.
Yeah, and I think too, you know, now that we're in year 5, I'm hoping to have Brandy and the site team, I'm going to challenge our site team to start pulling up some data, because we should be getting some data of how our students are making those choices at college. Are they successful at college? I'm not going to make any promises, because it's kind of hard to get that data once they've left our little cinder block building, but I think it'd be cool to see if we can start getting some data on our students. Do we have more students applying for college? Do we have more students attending their first year of college than we did prior to our Avid? And I think after having it for 4 years, we should be seeing those numbers.
Except we haven't graduated yet.
No, but we, to a certain extent, when we brought personal finance back, when we brought it back as a full year, we put the Avid 12 piece in there. And so I use a lot of Avid strategies and lessons in that. And so I think, especially with this class we just graduated, that data should be more available, and because that was the 3rd class that's graduated with it, and I think that we can start to get some information there. But you're right, the first Avid class we still have a couple years, but the seniors themselves, all of them have gotten that Avid piece to a certain extent, more each year for the last 3 years. And so I'd like to think that has had an impact. I know in our rubric, when we got to that college piece, I was pretty sure that we were at the 4s for a lot of it.
And I think-
And so I think that's part of it.
Too, and one thing I noticed not being here for 9 years and coming back, one thing I noticed and I attribute to Avid is the recognition and atmosphere of college in high school. The pennants, the college shirt days, celebrating that college is important. And also when you talk to other people that I've got to for the last 9, 10 years in other school districts, we're unique here with our daily Collins McDonald Fund. You know, we're really, really unique. So we have even better numbers of people interested about going to college because there is that financial impact that is lifted that a lot of kids would not take. But at the same time, I've noticed a change in just walking around and seeing what's going on and what's in the classrooms. There's a different feeling celebrating that post-secondary choice. So even though we don't have seniors that have been through it, they have been in an Avid school for 4 years. So I think we're going to see that starting with this
I
year.
think whether the data is easily attainable or not, I think it's at least worth starting to collect that.
Yeah.
I mean, whether you're starting to, down the road, seeing an increase from 2-year colleges to 4, or no colleges to 2 years, or trade schools, and it'd also be interesting to, with that, kind of track the number of students, graduates, immediately out of high school that are getting the Collins McDonald or Daily Fund. Because the cost of college is going up, and so is the Daily Fund, and Collins McDonald funding as many kids. And if it's not, then are we still seeing the increase in college as the primary funder for this community is decreasing or holding steady? Any statistics you can bring me.
I know. We'll see what we can come up with. No promises, but that's definitely something that, because any type of program you want to have data to back it up.
Anything else?
Anything else we got, Darwin?
Okay. So it looks like we're on 7.3 CTE and assessment conferences.
I was gone all week last week, through the CT revitalization grant, invited 2 of us to go to a 2-day CTE conference in Portland, state conference. And I've invited Fred. Fred was the number 2 who went there. I'll let him talk about that conference first, and I'll talk about it, then I'll get into the assessment conference that number 2 became.
Okay.
Go ahead, Fred.
In the old days, the conference that we attended would have been the Administrator CT conference, and it used to be held in April, and it generally bounced from Bend to Salem. Okay, and there was an embezzlement of over $100,000 by the treasurer of the Career and Technical Education Group, and so it took a couple of years to find her guilty, get her sentenced, and those kinds of things, get the money paid back, and then so we start anew with the conference this year. It was kind of off schedule. There will be another one again in April at this conference. The conference it's bent more towards administrators than to teachers, and so I'll describe some of the conferences I went to, the breakout sessions, and they were more to do about what administrators should be trying to do in their schools, those kinds of things. All right. We had 4 keynotes that we got to hear. The first one was a woman by the name of Ann Schatz. She is the first national woman sports broadcaster, and she now is with the Pac-12 network. She started out in the Tri-States. Basically, she started in about the same area where I started my teaching career, because way back in the dark ages when I coached football, we were in a conference championship game, 8-man. And if you know anything about 8-man football, it's kind of, the scores are like basketball scores, okay? And the team that I was helping coach won, it was 62-56. And as the assistant coach, I was sent to go talk to the radio and television folks, and she was one of them. And I'll never forget, it was a question, it's like, well, what do you attribute this great victory to? And I go, great defense. And she just rolled her eyes back and just like, God, spare me. And I said, well, we told our students if we had the ball at the end of the game, we probably will win. We had the ball at the end of the game, we won. And, but she talked about the 3 I's, of her belief in the 3 I's of education. all educators needed to work to, first and foremost, to inspire their students, or excuse me, first and foremost, to include all their students, make sure that all their students are engaged. Secondly, is to inspire the students, and then third, to influence them to bigger and better goals. And that was her message. She talked about meeting Billie Jean King. When she was in Omaha, Nebraska, she was like the sportscaster. Okay. When she came to Portland, she was talking about these people who just here on the street go, and this was her language. He can vouch for me. And she's sitting there. And she goes, people come up to me and go, "Oh, you're that sports announcer. You suck. You're terrible. Why are you doing this?"
Hate phone calls.
Hate mail, hate phone calls, all this stuff, and how meeting Billie Jean King was kind of a life changer for her, because Billie Jean King was like, "I don't want you to talk about me. Let's talk about you." And basically, here's Billie Jean King, who's this famous tennis star, and she's like, "Aren't you the first like national woman sportscaster?" So like, yeah. And she's like, "Own it. Own it. You're gonna have good, you're gonna have bad, but own it." And she said that just kind of changed her. And so she was talking about how that inspired her, how that influenced her, and how she felt then that she could be included with other sportscasters. So that was the first keynote speaker. Second keynote speaker talked about demographics and work ethic in particular. And he started his presentation, which was really cool. And he made this statement: the younger generation don't work, they're lazy, they have no ambition, they'll never go. Time Magazine, 1969. And then he just keep rolling these statements. And he's like, this is not a new phenomenon, but he stated some really interesting statistics. And the one that stung me, okay, personally, because I have a child who's 23, just turned 23. And in 1982, the year after my first year teaching, what percentage of children had a chore at home that they were required to do? Feed the dog, feed a horse, mow the lawn, whatever. What percentage do you think that would be? Just guess.
60.
85%. 85%. 1995, the last year they had data on this, what do you think that number dropped to? 7%. Okay? And then this guy begins with, the way you teach somebody how to work is give them a job. And start young. And keep going. And he goes, you know, we can do the best we can with schools, but we have to have them work. They have to work. And we have done all these wonderful things as parents. We've all taken these things away from our children, and it's kind of biting us. And he was really interesting. He was very, very good. The next keynoter, it was more kind of an advertising deal, so I spent more time watching my food than listening. And the last keynoter was, I have a real negative personally, because the gentleman is very, very bright. His name is Gene Bottoms. He is the former executive director of the Southern Regional Educational Board, and they are the largest CTE curriculum producing organization in the United States. But when I was in graduate school in 1990, he was an old guy. Okay, so I was a 33-year-old kid. He was an old guy. So I'm sitting there in the crowd going, he was old when I was young, and he's older yet. But he was in there and he was talking about the movement that was primarily what they spoke to at a lot of the meetings that I attended, and it was certifications and then building certifications into credentials. Okay, and how do we get students getting certificates that are recognized by industry, and how do we add those together to give them credentials so they can move from jobs to careers. And so the Southern Regional Educational Board is probably the leader in it. If you look at America and where they do the most technical education, it is in the Southeast. And so that's those states, you know, the Georgias, the Alabamas, Mississippis, Arkansas, those kind of places. And so that's what he was talking about. Workshops I went to, the first workshop that I wanted to go to was incorporating more writing into CTE. All right. The person didn't show up. So I had to leave that room and walk over, and the next one I went to was externships for teachers. And it was brought about the Manufacturers Association out of Portland and the construction industry out of Portland. We're both talking about, we want your teachers. to come and spend a couple of weeks with us to learn what writing skills they need, what math skills they need, what physical skills they need, what soft skills they need. And of course, I raise my hand and I go, us, the CTs, so I'm like, no. You guys basically know. We want the folks who are the traditional academicians so that they can see how we use geometry with a milling machine, or how we use geometry as we set up trusses, and et cetera, et cetera. And so that was the first workshop I went to. The next workshops I went to were how to, and the big press right now in the manufacturing world is to take a student and go from an idea to a product. And all the way between the processes of how you determine the best idea, how do you pre-set up your production, how do you produce it, how do you market it, how do you sell it. And that is manufacturing. It was really interesting because the gentleman came in and he said after natural resources, manufacturing is now the next largest industry in Oregon. And then he came on and he said, what is the largest manufacturer in Oregon? Food products. Okay. Between production of vegetables and those kinds of things, and including the explosion, and they noted this, the explosion in craft beers. And so everything related to the creation of craft beers has made food production number one. But number 2 and 3 were surprising to me, aerospace and military. But those industries are basically industries that are huge, but no organization has over 100 employees in the state of Oregon, and the average size is 65. And what they're doing is they're running on pure automation. So they're having technicians who are no longer welders, who are no longer machinists. It is, you have to have all the skill sets, plus the modeling and the ability to determine code from production. Okay, so when you have a manufacturing model like a CAD/CAM program, so you start out with the design, then you get the tool paths, and then you get the code that actually tells the machine how to cut. So that was a big thing. Other meetings I went to one on a drafting program, 1-year drafting program that's run by Portland's Community College, and they were explaining how they do it. I mean, they have these guys, they take people who can't even turn on a computer, and I raise my hand, I go, you have students who don't know how to turn a computer on, who are traditional age? Oh yeah, we have, they can run the cell phone, but they can't turn a computer on. I'm like, what world do they live in? Okay. And these guys are starting after 1 year of modeling and work with 3D printers. They're starting at $17K. 12 months, 19-year-old kids. I'm sitting there going, okay, what do we pay our beginning teachers? Okay, and what do we, next workshop I went to was one that was like, the state of Oregon is changing the approval and the updating processes for all of its CTE programs. And so I went to the one on the program that I'm in, which is manufacturing, and the things that they will be looking for as we update programs, the pieces of the pie, for lack of a better term. That was basically it. Some of the interesting things. Went to a workshop on credentialing and certification. The gentleman who was leading it was from the National Construction. I got the text here, but the state of Oregon right now is 300 individuals short in the construction trades, skilled construction labors. The state of Oregon is 300 short. They project it to be 3,000 in 10 years. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse, because what's happening is the nation at risk is biting. Okay. 1984, William Bennett. He was a good thing in a lot of things, but as education, as a Secretary of Education, he came out and said, if you don't go to college, America's going to go down. If you don't have a 4-year degree, we're done. Okay. The problem is the guys who were in the trades at that time were my guys, the baby boomers, and they're going out. And they're going out real fast. And so right now we're playing catch up. And all these guys could do is just say, just run hard. Show them that these are high skill, high wage jobs. You can get your education either through technical schools. If you're in the higher ends, like the engineering departments, universities, military is the greatest single trainer of these kinds of skills. So if the students don't have money and they're willing to do that, they'll go that route. And of course the military was there. they have issues as well because they are short in their recruiting. And so I asked the recruiter who was there, I go, we're hearing about all these industries that have shortfalls. How about your industry? He goes, oh, we're like everybody else. Like, oh. Because, we have some quotas, and they've actually shut down some functions of some of their units because they couldn't recruit them. And so that's what they're on. So, but that was the CTE. From my side, we went to a different set of.
Well, I'm just going to give common themes. The common theme of the whole thing is we have a lot of hands-on industry trade jobs out there, and they cannot fill them. So it was a kind of a big, rather large cheerleading session for CTE, and that, through the grants that we've been receiving and everything else, the CTE revitalization, the 98, it's kicking some life back into CTE, back in the schools, and there are a lot of high schools up there that are promoting their programs and the advances in their programs. The one that really comes to mind specifically is Lynn Benton Community College and its partnerships with the high schools in their area up there and connecting them with the local businesses in Albany and Corvallis and all that area up there, the manufacturing jobs, the trade jobs, and getting them through a 1 year or a 2 year program and shooting them straight into the industry. So that is a model, a new model that they are working on and trying to adapt and get the basic math skills, that basic English language skills, in addition to the intense training in the trade that they're being trained in. So that is a model I really want to look at further and see if there's some partnership we can have with KCC over here. I see it as a real opportunity. The other thing, Fred mentioned this guy who talked about work ethic. That was one session that really grabbed me. He basically said one of the statistics is fewer than 1 in 5 people have what they would call significant work ethic skills that are recognized by business and industry. This guy, his company is the Center for Work Ethic Development. Basically his whole thing is promotion of the teaching of work ethic or soft skills and work readiness for portable job skills. So that is something I'm going to dive in and take a look at, see if it's something we can apply to our high school, or even elementary for that matter, as far as this concept of work ethic. I listened to the U.S. Army. They had a presentation I went to. Their thing was related to the same topic related to work ethic, preparing students not just in the trade world, but developing that true work ethic to be able to get out there, be responsible, be on time, show up to work on time, work hard while you're on the job, be responsible. All those are the big things that, from his perspective, industry is really wanting to see some development. So anyway, I'm going to pursue that and really look into that. But to me, it was a great conference. There's a lot of success stories out there. The one thing that is a worry that I heard across the conference time and time again is all these many years of killing off, back to Secretary of Education Bennett and his Nation at Risk thing, and killing off CTE in lieu of a straight college path. We're paying for it in the teacher ed industry in CTE areas. When I went to Oregon State, the Ag Ed program that I was in was very strong. We had more than enough ag teachers turned out in that program every year to fill the ag teaching jobs across the state of Oregon. Across the hall from me was the industrial tech teachers part of the building. That was a full-blown, ongoing, organized program that turned out, a substantial amount of, shop teachers every year. They filled those jobs, and as the program at Oregon State was there to provide that and turn out shop teachers. Well, that program went away years ago. There is no shop teaching program at Oregon State. It's gone. And Lane and I, we talked about the other day as far as other, shop teaching programs. And Fred, you could probably weigh in on that. Where is the closest one?
Closest one, Central Washington. Central Washington, Long Beach State.
A lot of instances in the shop teaching part of the thing, it's more lucrative for them to go straight to industry and not go into teaching. So that was a real, stunning thing for me too, is to hear that. So I think in the CTE world, yes, we're doing some wonderful things, but I see one of the pitfalls being the problem of trying to find good teachers to recruit and bring to our programs. And I heard that from a number of administrators up there too. That is, I think that is the single number one largest issue at this time. Now, that was CTE, then I jumped in the car.
Will, can I add
Go
just
ahead.
one thing that you brought up, and I just kind of, under the heading of best practices, I went to this meeting on how to create a pipeline for middle schoolers through industry. And Lynn Benton Community College has a signing day for their technical trade programs. So the kids, you know, like if I had a welder who's a senior this year, they wanted to go to LB, they would be invited to LB. They put the banner out, Lynn Benton Community College Welding Tech. They have them sign that they're coming in. They have the instructors there. They have somebody from industry there to talk to them about work as they're there. And that's how they hook kids into their program. They actually have a signing day, and they showed us the videos of it. I'm like, well, that's kind of cool. Yeah, that's kind of neat. But that was just one of the best practice things. I was sitting there going, oh, that's pretty cool. But that was, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I thought that was a pretty cool deal.
Head down to Eugene then for the next 3 days, the Assessment Institute. And the one thing I spent 2 days on is a great big chore. It's light reading material here, but I'm not going to go through it. I'll tell you how.
It's really good reading.
For insomnia.
Spent an entire day with ODE. We have to submit, it used to be every 2 years, I don't know if, I believe this is 2 years too. Every 2 years we have to submit a consolidated improvement plan to ODE that it's been kind of loosey-goosey over the years. When we first started writing the consolidated improvement plans, it was all, it wasn't network-based. It was all basically hard copy. I think the second or third year I had to do it was when Sean Gallagher was here. And they ask you all these questions about your programs, you know, the data on your map, your language arts, your CTE, they want the whole broad range of the whole thing as far as what your data collections are, where your students are, what the growth rate is on your student achievement testing in math and language arts. And Bob Nash was here then, so it was Bob Nash, Sean Gallagher, and I were in on that too, Lee. All of us. We spent pretty much the entire fall, it was due November 1st, writing that consolidated improvement plan. It was all said and done, it was a 700-page document that we submitted to ODE. And I think probably it went up there and sat on some shelf and probably collected dust, but there was enough of us in the administrative field who went to a number of ODE things and said, you know, consolidated improvement is great. And if you're going to develop a plan, you need to have a plan that probably is going to be thorough, it's going to be concise, it's going to be short, that your teachers and your staff will buy into, and, you know, develop some goals and go with that plan. And they listened to us, and they listened to us, and they finally, this thing looks pretty overwhelming, but considering the way it used to be in the hard copy version, it shortened quite a bit. So there's a number of what they call key indicators that we are going to have to go through for site committees this year. And, you know, here's an indicator here. We have to go through as a committee, and we're going to have to go through this thing. High school doesn't have to do this, but the elementary does because they're Title I. But they'll have to go through as a school and with their committee and rate these, you know, 0 through 3 if they are, you know, where they stand as far as each indicator goes. So that's going to be a job with Susan and her subcommittee as far as Union Fremont. Hey, she gets that data done, and then I bring the high school group in, the elementary group in, and the site committees. And then we go through the district one. And the district one is also included in this packet. It doesn't look much different. It looks like this. And anyway, we were going to basically, the timeline on this is we have to go through and do this survey. Then we go through, we look at the results of the survey, and then we come back and we say, okay, we rated ourselves as 0 on this, that we're not performing, we're not doing it. What are the goals that we're going to put forward to do as a district in order to move this indicator forward? So It's gonna fit into also the superintendent advisory committee too. They'll have a hand in this too as far as the teaching and learning aspect of that committee. So basically, this is gonna be something we'll be reporting out to the board, you know, it will be real soon, I'd probably say, after we get into it in the fall, launch into it, get some data on it, and we'll report out to you as far as how this shakes out. Then, we take all this data, we put it in the electronic plan, and the electronic plan is due into ODE on June 30th, 2019. This is a comprehensive view. It is instructional strategies, attendance, behavior, all those aspects fit into this plan. The other thing they gave out to me that I'm supposed to keep confidential was all of our test results are going to go into our state report card. The administrative team and I looked at those. They haven't finalized the data that's going to go in the state report card yet, but as soon as they finalize that, we principal or we administrators have to take a look at that and, you know, look at the testing data, the growth data, the achievement data, and then it will roll into the state report card, and then that's a presentation to the board too as far as how the schools did in 2017-18. In addition, Susan Warner went, Chair Accounts went. I'm going to invite them to be at the next meeting and report out the number of the sessions I went to, and I'm going to make this short and sweet. Part of the Measure 98 plan that I had to write some narrative on and address is the issue of freshmen on track at Lakeview High School. In the sense, how are they doing in attendance, how are they doing in behavior, and how are they doing in grades. I went to a lot of sessions that involved, you know, inspiring and moving and keeping freshmen on track in order to increase your graduation rate at the end of the line. So a lot of advice they gave us was basically, when I originally wrote the plan, I think I wrote in there that we would review freshman data at the end of every 9 weeks. And I said, well, no, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be developing a freshman student study team, and you should be looking at the data either once a week after the greatest of not 2 weeks, and analyzing their grades, analyzing their attendance, analyzing their behavior, and, you know, getting them on a path of success. Because a lot of times they come into that freshman year and you don't pay attention to those things, and you lose them. So I talked to Lane and Chris about it. One of the things, as a result of the work sessions and the presentation I saw at this conference, are going to be related to a couple of things, and as it relates to Measure 98 also, the freshman on track aspect, and in addition, you know, the state in Measure 98, you know, wants us to see our graduation rate on our special populations come up too, and also our student achievement data on our special populations to come up as well. So I went to some sessions as far as developing the success in special populations. I work with Lonnie on that, and that's kind of primarily a high school issue too. So. Anyway, it was good conferences all week, learned a lot. So it's good to get away and kind of, you know, freshen the senses as far as your job and what you're doing and everything. And I appreciate the opportunity. Gave you a lot to talk quick about there.
So Measure 98's been in play now for a couple of years?
Yeah, we're heading into year 2.
So, you know, I'm sure that none of you guys probably have weeks on end, you have nothing to do, you easily fill in more gaps of your time to do this sort of weekly sort of checkup. So, I mean, something's got to fall off the plate. I mean, if you add more stuff on and more sort of assessing the freshman data and, you know, what are we giving up?
So I don't know if we're gonna give up so much as just be a little bit more organized. So I'm gonna try to answer that freshman tracking piece. What I'm looking for is on our Wednesdays, early release days. I just made that yearly calendar out for what we're going to do on those Wednesdays. And I have 2 Wednesdays a month devoted to PLC and or Avid time. And those times there, when you're in your professional learning communities, when you're in Avid site teams, there's no reason why we can't meet together as a group of freshman teachers and look at freshman data. Because that freshman data is totally going to be tied into those soft skills. That's where freshmen struggle. is those soft skills, the organization, learning how to study properly, how to turn in something. Remember that a test is in 2 weeks, because they've just left the world of warm and fuzzy, that social promotion rule. And so usually the biggest struggle with freshmen is for them to realize that grades do mean something, that if you don't pass, you have to take the class over. And so having those collaboration times and those Wednesdays, whether we're doing it through our Avid team or our PLC team, we'll be able to have those discussions. So I'm going to devote a chunk of time, I haven't figured out yet because I got a kind of new, but I am going to chunk a devotion of time, at least 30 minutes a month on Wednesdays to freshman team time, slowly to that. And if I can make some other times throughout the year, I'm going to. But that's something we're going to do. Because it's always been a statistic, if a freshman fails a class their first semester, their graduation rate drops to 30% or some crazy number like that.
Do you think the fact that our 7th and 8th graders are integrated within the high school, that some of that happens more at that 7th grade level now, as opposed to the freshman level?
Oh, I mean, not
Just
not
the-
passing.
Yeah. I
Well,
mean,
7th grade's tough too, because they
that's the big change for them, you know.
but it's not so
really
much
how
of an
much of it-
academic change, it's a social change.
You know.
The academic change is usually 9th grade. But I think that there's I think I know what you're probably getting at, is what are we doing for the 7th graders too, is that
Well,
transition piece.
Just as having a kid that, you know, came in from 6th grade to 7th grade, that was a lot bigger of a change than going from 8th grade to being a freshman. That was kind of like a non-issue compared to, like, from when I was in school and, you know, I was in a junior high and then went to high school, that was like a big deal. It's not a big deal because
They're already there.
they're already there. They've been there for 2 years by the time they're freshmen.
I think I'm gonna go back to two things. I think for me, you know, it used to be the middle school was a little bit more separate, even though we did share some
Right.
teachers and classrooms. So it'll be something new for me to watch in this integrated. And I was in an integrated building in Wyoming the last 2 years. But I think the key piece is usually what happens that whether it's a 6th to 7th or a 5th to 6th middle school, usually the social integration is the hardest piece, and how to work with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the academic piece is a hard piece for the freshmen, because we go past the promotion of just showing up and passing to, no, you need to have a C or a D better grade. So I think they both have issues that need to be addressed, monitored, watched through. And we'll have, when we do the 9th grade team, hopefully we're also doing a 7th grade or a middle school team, and we're doing the 10th and 11th grade team and the senior team. You know, it'll depend on the mixture of the staff, and people are gonna have to bump around. But we're gonna have those grade level meetings that look at our kids. And it's a RTI process, response to intervention, where you look at what are our students doing, why are they doing it, and how can we help them to do something better or celebrate that they're doing the right thing. So we'll have those in place and look at both of them. I agree with you though, both transition years are tough, and we need to monitor and watch our kids.
So I really appreciate finding efficiencies, but you didn't support my point very well that I'm going to make now. Is when we get new Measure 98s and new things like that, that create, once a semester isn't good enough, it's gotta be once a week, or, we function at a very minimal level just because of where we're at funding wise. And we try to provide programs, we don't have a lot of fluff on top of that. So I guess what I'd ask is that we continually, things that come out like that, what gets dropped off or what isn't getting covered as well, and start capturing that so we can go to our representatives and say, you keep putting these rules on us, and ODE keeps
Oh, okay, I see what you're
delivering that,
Okay,
but you're not giving us any more funding.
okay, I see what you're asking.
And so, if you want to keep making us do more, then start giving us more so we can get people to do that. So I do appreciate the efficiencies, and I think there are room, in a lot of what we do, there's room for efficiencies, but we also got to be better at capturing what are we missing because the regulations are just, or requirements are just more and more every year. And that's one of my things, is we need to do a better job of communicating with our representatives and saying, hey, enough's enough. Give us some more to hire more people to do this stuff that you're asking.
Justin, that was a theme, I think, about maybe 2 or 3 years ago, Will, with the OSBA conference. No new requirements is kind of a thing, and then they had some budget shortfalls, and they did the Oregon Rising at that point. And that was great, but it seemed like this most recent version of Oregon Rising, where they ran out of peak budget, they also added a bunch of requirements with it. So I think you do want to make sure your legislative advocacy that you're looking at that as well, because they need to give you time. Okay, you want us to do X, Y, and Z. They need to give you time to implement it. So that's always a push that we've noticed legislatively. Will and I have talked about that at some of the various Oregon School Board Association
The
conferences.
big stroke for me, and we've heard it before, is the PE mandate.
Mhm.
I'm still pretty heated about the PE mandate and what they're requiring us to do on that, and increasing the minutes. Where's it gonna come from? They already want us to have 90 minutes of language arts every day for elementary. They want us to have at least 60 to 90 minutes of math. Basically, in order to do those things, we've lost time in social studies, we've lost time in science, we've lost time in the arts, we've lost time in music. It's a bitter pill for me. The PE thing probably with me was my biggest sort of spot for PE. And I went through, I gave you the reports before, so I'm not going to drone on this, but I went through the state legislature. We all yelled and screamed at the end of the day, yeah, we'll give you an extension, but we're not budgeting. We're still going to do 150 minutes per week in elementary, and they didn't give them all. So that's something we're going to have to tussle this year. Susan and I as far as figuring out how we're going to do this with PE today. But yeah, it just supports your argument, which I totally agree with.
And hopefully now with Mr. Rose and Mr. Stratton here, we will have some more consistency within our schools and be able to do something other than just provide anecdotal evidence to our representation. Something that, hey, we've lost this, or we can't provide this, and we aren't doing this now because we're doing this.
I thought you were gonna have us teach PE at the elementary school. I was like, okay.
So I think you understand what I'm getting at.
Exactly.
Something just keep in mind, because I think it's something we've been struggling with for a number of years, and I don't see it changing anytime soon.
I agree. Anyway, thank you.
So, any more questions on CTE and assessment? Okay, so now we're gonna hear about facilities, and hopefully in that, we're gonna hear about a wonderful air conditioning system for this building that is quiet, and we can run while we're having a meeting.
I have it on, but I can't hear you guys.
Because it's getting terrible.
I'm so sorry. Is the windows open?
I'm not sure it's any cooler out there.
Well, I mean, it'd be some, I don't know, circulating air or something.
That's the shame of this.
So the district office is the steps over to the school and we get nothing. How about that?
Pretty far down the ladder.
Love to accommodate, however. Not really. Well, I'm sure you guys have drove around the whole campus and I've seen several things happening, right? You guys have been flat busy. In fact, I'm a little bit concerned about the stuff that's inside the schools that we need to get to, just because we've been outside, trying to get everything done. But luckily, we've got the guys on 410s, and so we've got it staggered Monday through Thursday for one, and Tuesday through Friday for the other. And then my bus guy is currently stuck in the bus barn because we got to get those bus inspections done. So he's been grounded to his shop out there. But it's been helpful that the days that they're there on their own, so Monday and Fridays, they can get in the buildings and start getting some of those things whacked out. We've had several teachers new to the elementary school and completely to a new building, to a new classroom, so they've been helping out with that. And so those pieces have maybe been neglected a little bit, but on the outside, we've had a lot on and on. I don't know if you guys noticed right out here at the scoreboard for the soccer field, we finally got our beams set. We got some concrete poured. They've got that curing. That was as of yesterday. So it's still curing. They're hoping to hang that board, the actual board. They're shooting for Tuesday. They're going to have to get up there and place it. weld it while it's in air. So we've had to line up some forklifts and things like that to hold it adjusted up there.
So are we gonna be able to actually use the soccer field, or are we gonna have a scoreboard and still play over here?
Well, I believe that the boys played over here last year, when they were here, and plus AYSO for sure played there also.
Our goals be on that field.
Wainemo will be in right after that, so as soon as they get it set, it's solid. We've already got the trench dug, so half of their work is done. So the goal is to have that done in the next, by the end of next week. And that includes having Wainemo here. So that will be off our work plates. The other one that's hanging out there is the Fremont Reading Garden. We didn't order quite enough gravel. We ordered some more, having it delivered. We also have benches and tables that are still being held over here, so their goal is to fully stock it and ready to go the week of the 20th. Out at Union, I don't know how many people have drove out there, but we kind of let the grass grow a little bit longer because we kind of revamped the sprinklers. They weren't hitting all the way around, so we had quite a few dry spots. So we let the grass grow up a little bit so we could plant some more grass after we revamped the sprinklers. We let it go for a while, especially in the front end. Got those going, and I do believe they mowed last week. They were able to get in there and mow. So that looks a little bit better. Beautification on Union, that front part is a struggle to keep going. The 80 hay asphalt, that has been completely laid down. It's completed. We do have one spot that once we kind of got to looking at it, when we did our inspection to sign off on it, the water wants to run back to the building. So what's happened is they got their grade off a little bit when they came in and graded that. So what they're going to do is they're not going to tear it out. They have some sort of way to lower that one side down so it rolls back out instead of back into the building. I talked to Jerry this morning. He was thinking either next week or the week after is when they could get back here to take care of that. The hoop should be back in prior to school starting, and that will complete that project. And I believe that they've had our student workers that we've got on work experience here kind of leveling out between the grass and the paint. So that's there. You'll see tonight also that there's a change order. What had happened is for another $2,500.
We're not on old business.
Hey, time out. Better
Preview.
give me a preview. The $2,500. So when the county came in and remember that was a donation back to us from the county. They tore all the old out. They graded it. Well, they missed a spot that was not graded correctly, and so Rocky Mountain came in and had to do something with it before they could lay the asphalt. I know that they spent a whole day here just on that, just to make sure that was correct. And that's a whole nother spot from rolling back into the water, rolling back into the building. What he did is he kind of cut me a pretty good deal because they were here for a good 8 to 10 hours that day, redoing that subgrade. And it was no fault to the county. I think that they got busy and just got in a rush and it got missed. So they completed that, but the only thing he charged me for was for the labor. He didn't charge me the equipment that was on that. So the $2,500, which is coming up in a moment, is just a preview of that. So we did have to go ahead and do that. So I thought that $2,500 on the prevailing wage job was probably pretty reasonable on that note. Let's see here. So the CTE revitalization grant is up and rolling. You guys accepted those bids last board meeting. Had a meeting with all the players, Norco, PPNL, the filtration people, Carl Tracy. I had my high school principal here along with Mr. Cahill. My goal there was to coordinate a time frame. We're gonna be within the fall semester, absolutely. So he worked with his teachers to coordinate that. What PPNL, the filtration and Norco's, what they're trying to do is be seamless. So we will have approximately 4 to 6 welders running at all times. And basically when we do get the booths and that in here and ready to install, it would be an install Friday night. Put them in, by Monday morning, we're up and running again. So that's the goal, is to be seamless in that. Carl Tracy's gonna get in there within the next 2 weeks. That's the biggest piece of this, is all that electrical, removing the electrical. And then of course PPNL is fairly simple. They're gonna set a pole, a meter on the side of the building that runs all of that. So that piece is easy. It's the rest of it that, and I would say Carl Tracy has the biggest job possible to do in that. So that's in motion. They've ordered the filtration, and the welders, the brand new welders, are on order and set to deliver. And I haven't had confirmation. As soon as they went back on Monday, then they're gonna go ahead and make those orders. And it sounded like they had every single one of those in stocked, so that they could come on.
So what's our estimated date to,
I don't have an estimated date to be done. These guys are looking probably 4 to 6 weeks out before they'll get in here. It may run us into a week at maybe Christmas break. If we do have some sort of issue and we have to shut that classroom down, they're gonna try to work it to that advantage on a Christmas break or a Thanksgiving break. And we're trying to stay out of that. We think we can stay out of that. But just in case. We can get in that. The pivot out on the ag farm. So that, Jay has got that up, completely put together. Right now, we are waiting on some stilts for the main line to come across. And those are being built, and the main line, I believe, is we're using off of the town. They've already got some main line there. And then the next piece of that will be the electrical, but we can't do that till the main line comes across. And once that electrical gets to pivot from the box, then Mr. Nelson will be back down from Burns, hook us up, make sure we're running, everything's functional, no problems. So that's where we're at there. The tech grant that we've all been waiting to hear about, we dug deep down into that last week. Had a conference call with them. They are prepping for a report to you guys on the August 22nd meeting, and they're not going to give as many down deep details, although it's available. He's going to give you an overview of where we are functionally in every single building. So that will be on the next meeting. Also at the next meeting is the DMS main floor bathrooms. We've got some drawings done, kind of have an action plan there. That bid will be up for approval on the 8/22 meeting, and then we can sprinkle on that. Right now, that's what I got.
Thank you, Janet, and everyone else for wonderful reports. Do we have any questions from anyone? Actually, I have one thought. The next meeting, when we get to the facilities presentation,
The tech one.
yeah, is there something that's going to occur right after that as far as with that information? I mean, is it time sensitive to get that on the 22nd? And I guess I asked just because obviously we're missing 2 people here, and who knows where we'll be in another 2 weeks, and I think it's pretty important information
It is very important.
for not only our folks the board here, but I think we ought to invite maybe some of the budget committee folks as well,
Well,
because they're obviously putting in some of that.
well, and I think the direction, that it's gonna give you a brief overview, you know, a sky level overview of what shape our building is in, what the cost looks like. And then I have asked, this gentleman will be here from Colorado, and I have asked him, to present to us options so that we can start exploring which one to go. Whether that be, you know, maybe some sort of bond measure out there, how much deferred maintenance can we take on ourselves, those kinds of ideas. So I had him do that, and go that route for the next meeting. I thought that that would be a little bit more informative for us as we start breaking it back down and say, okay, where do we need to go? What do we need to do? How do we go that? Because if we do something like decide to go for a bond measure, none of us can advertise that or you know, do any of those things. So those kind of committees have to come forward also. So that's kind of where I put that,
Okay.
if that helps you sort through that a little bit.
Okay, well, I guess I'd ask if we are missing some board members, it'll
Absolutely.
be during a report time, and maybe we could look at getting a copy of just that portion of the video
And
for members to watch.
sure, absolutely, and that's not a problem. And we'll kind of play that by ear.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know, we don't want him to get halfway committed to
Yeah,
being here.
if he's coming from Colorado, we'll just go with it, but I think we gotta look at making sure somehow is videotaped that portion and get that to those that
You can get
are,
that discussion, absolutely.
that are not here, so they can.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because if you guys are gonna go for a bond, you gotta be committed to that, because that's gonna be a year process of selling it to the public. Being bond counsel, that's an expensive proposition. It's worthwhile if you know what you're doing, because it's one of the few areas where you don't have property tax limitations, but you've gotta really, you know, you've gotta get a community group usually together that's gonna go with it to really sell it, because if you don't, it's a lot of money to spend to get the big no from the voters when you get on the ballot.
That's gonna be very well planned, very well orchestrated, you know, this committee set up, and it has to be a huge amount of PR. I went to some of those things 2 years ago in regard to this Senate Bill 540, and they did a lot of copies. They took a lot of groups around and looked at the buildings, and it's quite a campaign just all by itself.
Let's throw it this way, there's been one bond passed, I think, the last 20 years, that was the hospital. The library failed twice. I mean, I think the last one before that was the big water one, for putting in the sewer rooms, kind of Lakeview. So this area is, most small areas, it's really tough, and it's very typical, public safety levies and everything else. The only time you get it is you get public buy-in, you get the support, you get that 51% or more before the vote. Because if you don't, you're gonna lose.
Well, thank you. I guess we're on to old business 8.1. Change order number 2, Rocky Mountain Construction. What's this one?
You're a comedian today. So, as I discussed prior, we've already done the first change order, which was the curb and gutter situation that we fell into after we pulled out the old asphalt. And so this is the 2,500 is the only one that we're waiting on to do, and of which, like I said, that's basically just their labor, no equipment in charge to that bill for us.
Any questions on the change?
I move to approve the change order number 2 to Rocky Mountain Construction as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the change number 2 to RMC. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passed. Number 9, new business.
I have none, Mr. Chair.
Okay, number 10, consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Number 11, announcements.
Actually, I do have one that didn't get on the agenda, and that's my fault. To remind you that in-service week will be August 27th through the 30th, and that the annual chore of the school board, along with administrators, is to cook that Monday morning breakfast. So, Monday morning, August 27th, 6:30, cafeteria will meet to cook the breakfast for our staff. And I'd like to have you board members stick around so I can get you introduced to the staff as well.
You're on for pancakes making, testing.
I'm the fruit cutter.
I guess it's Mrs. Warner has the dying desire to do the pancakes for some reason. She insists. And I have a second announcement too. We have a new reporter here from the Examiner. I'd like him to stand up and introduce himself.
Oh boy, exciting. I unfortunately won't be here for most of it because Michael is actually on leave, not leave, had a family matter, but I am Garrett Shaw, came all the way from Cleveland, Ohio, so I've been here for 3 weeks and just kind of meeting everybody and filling in when I can, so.
Well, welcome, Garrett.
Thanks.
That's all I have.
Number 12, next board meeting agenda items.
So I think we ought to at least consider that if we're missing and don't have a full board, that we postpone the election of the chair and vice chair. Well, I'm thinking that there's several of you are going to be gone, and I could nominate you while missing in action, which is what we ended up having to do last year too.
I would agree with that. We've now postponed it twice, so
Yeah.
I'd rather see all 5 of you here to do that.
Okay.
OSBA policies again, and of course that report. I guess that's kind of it for the time being as far as, items for the next meeting.
Okay. I'm not sure we're ready for 13.
I move to adjourn our meeting.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, meeting is adjourned.
I'll send you an